this is one thing that I abhor, is when you see somebody that is in a training or a teaching position or in a mentoring position, and they have the attitude, like you ask a question, or you might see this happen. The trainee or the mentee or whoever asks a question, or they make a little mistake that is to be expected because they're new, and the trainer or the mentor or the teacher does this. They're like, God, they don't even know about X, Y, and Z. God, in my day, everybody knew. Or, you're never going to get anywhere because you don't even understand this. I abhor that kind of person because, or that kind of thinking, let's say, because that right there is this. All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another video. Today's topic is imposter syndrome, the spotlight effect, and the curse of knowledge. Why almost nobody is critically judging you. Okay, so we're going to take this in parts and weave them together as best as possible. And let's go ahead and, as usual, jump right in. Full disclaimer, most of these concepts came from this book that I am currently reading called Presence. It's by Amy Cuddy, who, at least at the time of this writing, had like the largest or second largest or third largest TED Talk as far as view count, right? Which is that's a pretty astonishing feat for, whatever time period, right? So, Presence is a book about being present, about having it's just the impact that you have, the emotions you elicit, all of those things. All right, so she goes over in this book these concepts. All right, I'm going to put in my personal experiences and also cross-reference all of this with all of these other books that I'm reading and other people that I have followed and studied. So let's go ahead and get started. So, imposter syndrome. You have probably heard about that one before. Imposter syndrome basically is that feeling that, hey, I'm not good enough for this thing, that I don't know how I got here. Who knows how long it's going to be before people figure it out that I don't belong here, that I don't know, I must have got lucky or cheated my way in, or somebody was just in a really good mood and gave me this opportunity, gave me this job or this gig or this lifestyle or this publicity. Any of those things. You've probably felt at some point the sting, let's say, of imposter syndrome. Probably multiple times in your life, even if they were small, right? You can have for example, you could be, teaching one of your friends how to play poker, and you are by no means a poker champion or professional player or any of those things. And while you're teaching them, you might not have every single, move or term or a piece of information that a champion or somebody who plays in the professional sphere, you may not have all of that to be able to teach them. So you might be thinking, okay, sometimes, this is a little thing, but with little things, like I said, you might be thinking, who am I to teach this concept, this game, to somebody else? And you might have little flashes of that during the, maybe you spend an hour or 2 hours or 10 hours teaching someone how to play poker. Poker generally is, yes, it's easy to kind of get into, difficult to master, for sure. That's why, people have poker coaches. You can have coaches for anything, even something that's easy, because the poker, like so many things, is also a social game. We talk a lot about social stuff. This actually is all pretty much social stuff, so poker is actually very kind of appropriate. But that's just a for instance. You could be teaching someone poker, and you could be thinking, well, I'm not so-and-so. All right, who's a good poker player? Annie Duke wrote this book, if you can see down here, this white book, Quit. She was a professional poker player. You could be teaching your friend how to play poker, and you're like, man, I'm no Annie Duke. And have a little bit of that imposter syndrome. Or it can go all the way up to your job. You could be somebody who is a manager or a big wig of some kind at your job, an executive, whatever the case is. You could own your own business. and be in a teaching position, a training position for plenty of people who come through. And at times you will get that feeling, man, am I really the one? Am I really the one who should be training people? Why should they be listening to me when there's so many other great people? Because always, especially with people who are on the rise, who learn from other people, who are highly intelligent and eclectic, there's a saying that I love. I think it was Sir Isaac Newton said that if I seem great, it is only because I am standing on the shoulders of giants. That kind of attitude can make you feel, ooh, I'm a little bit of an imposter, man. I'm not so great. It's just because I'm standing on the shoulders of the truly great. Do you see what I'm saying? But, so everybody gets that. That's what imposter syndrome is. I've also written experience here at the end because in some fields they like to use the word imposter experience, because syndrome sort of implies a little bit more of a targeted and smaller audience of people that get it. Just like if you have any syndrome, like some true like mental disability like Down syndrome or something like that, it targets a certain small demographic of people. And the reason some people like to call it imposter experience is because they say, kind of like I have already mentioned, that so many people, almost everybody actually, experiences this at some point, and often multiple points throughout their life. You could go through seasons of, man, this whole year I have felt like an imposter. Like, I'm not as great as all of these accolades and this position or this office or this standing is making me seem. I'm not as great as all that stuff implies. Do you see what I'm saying? And you can go through seasons of that, especially the higher up you get in something. A lot of the times, the more you'll start to feel that. Because, especially when you look at the people who you learn from, you're like, dude, I'm not them. I'm an imposter. Go back to talking about poker. Like, I'm no Andy Duke. You could be like, I'm no Michael Jordan, and I'm trying to teach, I don't know, a youth basketball team or something, and you're like, okay, so should I teach my experiences? Should I teach what Michael Jordan would? Should I just be like, hey, don't listen to me at all and just watch the greats? It's probably a little bit of a blend, is what people you're teaching should do, but never be afraid to expose people to ideas. To be perfectly transparent and vulnerable with you guys for a minute, I have that feeling. These concepts, any videos I do on here are pretty much, they're my way of expressing what the truly great people have already either expressed, written books about, lived, experienced, taught for decades, and I get on here to expose other people about it, or to it. And sometimes I feel like, yeah, who am I to teach things like imposter syndrome and the spotlight effect and the curse of knowledge when somebody, like I said, Amy Cuddy, is much more qualified. But even her, in this book, she talks about so many times where she has felt the imposter. She has felt that she was the imposter, even though lots of people feel that. And in fact, she goes on to say during her talks and stuff, after she's done them on that specific topic, a lot of people come up to her and are like, you seem like you are telling the story of my own life. I feel like an imposter all the time. It's amazing that somebody as great as you feels like that. And this is where she would probably agree, this experience that lots of people, more than you would imagine, feel like that. Feel like they're afraid to even get up and go to work or go and do something like this, or do a talk, or do a training, or just take a job they've already been given and keep showing up, because that happens. You feel like an imposter sometimes. She talks about a lot of people in there. Natalie Portman was one of the people that had that feeling when she went to Harvard. She was like, oh, I'm just some dumb actress, and I don't belong here in Harvard. I'm not smart enough. I got in accidentally. Maybe it was because of the some credentials or some people I knew or whatever it was that got me in. Basically, I was super lucky. And even somebody like her, who Natalie Portman is known to be not only a great actress, but also a very intelligent woman in general. So of course most of us would be like, no, that's not true at all. And I'm sure people that she went through that experience with, like her teachers or her family or whomever, were like, no, that's absolutely not true. Don't be down on yourself. So we're gonna talk some more about imposter syndrome. Let's go ahead and get into this second thing here, which is an interesting topic. This is the spotlight effect, or the spotlight bias. I'm not sure if anyone official, here's me being an imposter, right, by calling this the spotlight bias. They might have. I haven't seen it yet, but we have these cognitive biases that I talk about on here a lot that kind of impair our ability to function through just basically straight up cognitive, not just cognitive ability, just being, you know what I mean? Like taking things how they are. Logic. These cognitive biases of ours are shortcuts that the brain has developed in order to save energy, for the most part, is why they happen, or to keep you alive. All right, so one of them, for example, is I talk about a lot on here, the commitment consistency bias. That means that basically the more often you commit to doing something and doing it and doing it and doing it, the easier it becomes every time, and it's harder to get out of it. That's what starts habits. And when you fall prey, as all of us do, to these cognitive biases, you don't use logic as much, and sometimes not at all, because it's so much easier to use the biases, to follow the path that they have given you. So I call this one the spotlight bias, even though that might not be an official term. You know, this is a bias in some way or the other. I'm not sure if they call it the spotlight. That's why I'll call it I know they call it the spotlight effect, and I might say spotlight bias. So what is that? The spotlight effect or bias basically is, what it means is like when you are performing pretty much anything, and you're going about it, and then you think about how was it received. You think about it during the time you were performing and afterwards, of like, oh, how was I received? Did I look okay? Did I sound okay? Did I stand up straight and tall? Did I make enough eye contact? Was I interesting and entertaining? Blah, 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 blah. Spotlight effect says basically, whenever you're given the spotlight, so to speak, even for a few seconds, we think that people pay a lot more attention to us than they actually do. Remember, everybody is on some level egotistic and a narcissist. All right, it's a sliding scale. Now, you don't want to be an actual hyper narcissist, so all you care about is yourself, and to hell with everybody else, and you'll screw everybody else over the second you get the no. That's not what we're talking about. Everyone's a narcissist in the way that, hey, brains are designed to make you feel like you are the center of the universe, because that is evolutionarily stable, right? To keep you alive. If you're giving all of your resources and your effort away to other people around you, even to causes, if you do that too much, you will die. Trust me, if you give away every single cent or every piece of food that you acquire because you want to be a saint, you will die. You stop eating, you are going to die. And so you need to be egotistic and narcissistic in a little bit, right? It's a sliding scale, like I said. Everybody's a little bit of one, because where do you draw the line? Now, I don't want to split hairs here and get into the semantics of, oh, well, the narcissist is when you start harming other people and you're getting too much. Yeah, I get that. But like I said, in a little bit of a degree, all of us are. So your brain thinks, the spotlight bias basically says that your brain thinks you're the middle of the universe, man, and everything revolves around you. Everything is existing in celebration of you. All right? Now, there are some benefits to having a thought process like that, some of them, you don't want to be delusional, because you'll probably lose all of your friends and anyone who supports you if you become too deluded on that topic. All right, but for the most part, this spotlight bias or spotlight effect is telling you that, hey, I'm worried about what everyone's thinking. There is a little bit of there is a correctness to feeling that way a little bit, because there's a certain amount of placating that you kind of need to do. You need to operate in society. You need to not go off the deep end and everything is about you, and right, but you also right, you need to also be able to, like I said, operate in society. You got to work with these people. You got to live with these people. You got to not be hated, man. You're not going to get anywhere if everyone hates you. And also, remember this too. Even the people that you probably hate, some big stars or some celebrities or some really rich people or some politicians. I'm sure you can name a list of any of those kinds of people that I'm talking about. Even those people that you hate, and you know a lot of people that hate, if they are making it, if they are still doing great things, not everybody hates them. That is just the truth of the matter. No matter who it is, no matter how terrible a person they are, in some way or another, they have friends, they have allies, and there are people that love them. It's just the way it is. You would not get anywhere if every single person hated you. It doesn't happen. You would lose everything you had, even if you had everything. All right? So anyways, little side note there. But spotlight effect basically says your brain is making you think that people are paying more attention than they are. A lot of whatever attention you think they're paying to you, if you have this, so this goes hand in hand with this imposter syndrome. That's why, like, oh, everyone's gonna find out I don't know everything and I'm not as great as this and this and this. When you're presenting something or you're operating, as long as you are decent at it, almost nobody is doing this. Try and be like, oh, let's look, let's get our binoculars out and our magnifying glass and let's go over this person as thoroughly as possible and find out if they are an imposter, if they are deceiving us, if they are deserving of whatever attention they're getting. This is why my subscript is why almost nobody is critically judging you. Just having the courage to get up and present, like, this is where stage fright comes in, this spotlight effect. Even turning on videos, a lot of, this is probably the first generation of people, now that we can record videos very easily. Remember, you used to have to pick up these camcorders and, like, they were big and heavy and they took VHS tapes or something like that. And they were extremely expensive and they were much, 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 much lower quality than the camera, the shitty one you might have in your phone. You could buy the crappiest phone, dude, and that is still better than most of the thousands of dollars that people would spend on cameras. That all they did was camera. That's all they did. They didn't call people, they didn't Wi-Fi in the web and hard drives and all this. You know what I'm talking about. Back then, it was harder to get practice. Now, people are gaining their courage back a little. This is a good thing, I think. But even when you first turn that stuff on, even doing something like this, even for me, it's a little nerve-wracking. Stage fright. That's like the biggest fear, right? Is public speaking. Well, the spotlight effect is a big component of that, because your brain makes you think that, get this, you're the center of the universe and everyone's gonna look at that and critically judge you. Now, if you do something really stupid, first of all, don't do that, okay? I wouldn't start off with highly controversial stuff or stunts that you're not good at, that you might hurt yourself or any of that stuff, okay? Because that's just common sense. But, like, as long as you don't do something that's just really out there, nobody is gonna just look around and just be sitting around a dinner table be like, oh, look at this idiot, you know, and just, that's what we think. That is what your brain, that spotlight bias, is making you think. So that goes hand in hand with this imposter syndrome. Do you see how they kind of feed off of each other? Imposter syndrome already has you wound up thinking that you're not good enough to start something. Hey, man, even if you say some wrong things, you do some wrong things, you mess up, you got to start over a couple of times, you had the courage to do it. most people out there, I would say close to 99% probably, don't have the courage to even put themselves out there, not in the sense that is very vulnerable. All right? Even if it was 75% of people don't, well, that's still 1 out of 4. You're still 1 out of 4 in progress, because you're willing to go out there and do it. And the spotlight effect says, man, don't worry about it. Just if as long as you don't totally suck, they're not gonna hate you. Who does that? Nobody goes out there and follows people around just to hate on them. That happens when you become big, and we'll talk about that. That's a different level of this imposter syndrome, because most people, even these big people we're talking about, Amy Cuddy did a TED Talk. I'm not to the point that I could do a TED Talk right now, and if I did, I'd probably be shaking like a wet dog because I'd be kind of scared of it. Alright? I mean, I'd be better off than if I've never started a YouTube channel or did any recording or any public speaking. I mean, I've done those things, but hey, a TED Talk, that's a big deal. And even her and people like her say, hey, we feel that all the time. It's seductive to think that maybe we're not good enough. Maybe everybody is spotlighting us. Now, you gain haters when you start doing things. What is that quote? It goes something, I might not do it perfectly. It goes something like, if you don't want haters, don't think, don't do anything, don't try anything, don't become anything. If you don't want haters, that's a good way to not get any haters. I mean, you might have some people be like, oh, he or she is a loser or something. I mean, whatever, maybe. But the way that you get haters is by becoming something. Think about it. The people that you hate are probably somebody. We're talking about like people of impact, whether good or bad. Okay? You can look at people from the past, people who are dead now, from history and stuff, and you'll probably find that you might overall not like somebody like Hitler or something, but there's probably positive things you could say about them, like, hey, they were actually very efficient at this, or hey, look how they captured the hearts of a nation or of a people, or hey, look how they were actually very intelligent, whether they used it for good or evil. You see what I'm saying? So you're probably not going to get haters to begin with, and by the time that you get them, you'll have a lot more experience and you'll have way more fans. Because healthy people don't, even if they don't like you, they don't follow you around berating you. People who do that, like, they're like, I don't think I've met that many people who do that, but like once in a while, like somebody will, I don't know, like on their social media or something, like a celebrity or whatever. No matter how good of a person they are, they could be saving puppies and getting kittens out of trees and like volunteering at the fire department and busting through the door to save people, and people will still come in there and criticize them. So some people will do that. Be like, oh, but did you do it blindfolded? All right? Did you lose all of your money in order to save those people? Because if you kept anything for yourself, then you're rotten. That is not a healthy person. And you don't want to... I've said this before on here, but always remember, don't ever take criticism from somebody you would not take advice from. If there's somebody that irks you or something, and you wouldn't take advice from them, like honestly, like, no, I'm not taking advice from them, that's a bad idea. Do not take criticism from them. Don't care. Okay? That is a little bit of a tangent here. Spotlight bias makes us feel like what I just talked about is going to be everybody. That every person is going to have their little opinion and are going to be looking at you through those, those opera glasses that they had, or those little binoculars they used to have at operas and what. That's what your brain is making you think. That you're on stage, the spotlight is on you, and everybody's got a pair of opera binoculars. And they're just waiting so that they're going to rush to the newspapers and tell everybody about you. Or today, probably social media or something. That's probably not going to happen. It just isn't. And usually when you see it happen, it's with people who have already made it pretty big. And that's just a part of life at that point. But Remember the spotlight bias. Oftentimes, because remember, everybody else is a narcissist too, to a degree. Not saying everybody is bad or bad for humanity or any of that. Of course not. Come on. Like, yeah, you use your brain here. But everybody else's brain is making them feel like the center of the universe. They're not thinking about you quite as much as your brain is making you think. So don't worry if you mess up a couple of times. Alright? Or anything like that. Let's talk about this last thing here. This is the curse of knowledge. Now, the curse of knowledge plays into this imposter experience because this is what the curse of knowledge is. The curse of knowledge is basically when you become pretty acquainted with some sort of knowledge or some industry or with your work or with whatever you want the subject to be, and you know a lot about it or you have a lot of experience with it. The curse of knowledge says you start to forget, all right, that other people don't have the same knowledge and experience as you. That even some trivial things that you find trivial now, some of those things they don't understand. So that's just because people have only so much time during the day. Everyone has their own interests. Everyone has their own life. So there are things that once you start going down a path and you start gaining new skills and more knowledge and more wisdom about something, your brain kind of makes a shortcut, which is called the curse of knowledge, and the curse is it makes you think that, okay, everybody else understands you, like, quickly. Like, you don't have to explain the little things or the little bits and pieces and operating mechanics of whatever subject you're talking about. You see this a lot, and this is one thing that I abhor, is when you see somebody that is in a training or a teaching position or in a mentoring position and they have the attitude, like you ask a question, or you might see this happen. The trainee or the mentee or whoever asks a question or they make a little mistake that is to be expected because they're new, and the trainer or the mentor or the teacher does this. They're like, God, they don't even know about X, Y, and Z. God, in my day, everybody knew. Or, you're never going to get anywhere because you don't even understand this. I abhor that kind of person or that kind of thinking, let's say, because that right there is this. That thing is basically making you into an asshole because you're so far along in something you forgot that you were once new to it. Let me tell you what you came out of the womb knowing, or rather, let me tell you what you didn't know. You didn't know anything, right? Basically, you knew that, hey, I need to eat, I need to not be cold, I need to not hear loud noises, and I need to not fall. Those kinds of things. And I mean, they say that babies are born basically with only two actual fears, and that's the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. Everything else is learned, right? Over time and conditioning and all that stuff. All right? I'm sure there's more updated science on that. I'm not like some sort of a child development kind of expert or anything like that, but it's an interesting to think about. And you get those people sometimes that forget that, hey, people are new to things. They're not going to be perfect, and they give this attitude of when they're in because this comes from their own ego. That curse of knowledge. They think that, oh, you don't know how to, I don't know, do, what do you call it? Arithmetic in math, or you can't do fractions. Man, I know some adults that still can't do fractions. Should they be able to? Probably, but I don't go up to them and be like, man, you don't know this. I can't believe it, man. This person doesn't even know how to do fractions or whatever. You know the kind of person I'm talking about, who is an asshole with it. That's the curse of knowledge. That's taking it far, but that's the extreme and makes it easy to see. The curse of knowledge is, though, basically whenever you have that feeling like, God, you didn't know this, sometimes, yes, there are some common sense things that people should know. They should be a little, have some situational awareness of some things. Yes, of course. But for the most part, that curse of knowledge, you can go into any field. You see this, if any of y'all play video games, for example, you see this in video games a lot. And this is why I will say that some of these people that play these, especially multiplayer games like MMOs, like Warcraft or Fortnite or Call of Duty or just anything like that, and somebody starts messing up on their team, or maybe they're new, and what do? They call them a noob. They're like, oh, this person doesn't even know this or this, and they start all of this crap, right? You see what I'm saying? That's that curse of knowledge. They forgot that when they were born, did they know how to play Call of Duty? I'm guessing they didn't, okay? So, why is this relevant? Well, the curse of knowledge here, it's relevant to imposter syndrome because part of it is this. Like, you're explaining something, and people sometimes aren't going to get it immediately. And then what might that make you think? That, oh, see, look what I was saying. I'm not good at this. I'm not the kind of person that can do this. I don't understand it well enough, or any of those things. And a lot of times, like, no, it's not. People need to get the whole story. I have a very important video on here that is, it's something to the order of, you must not skip steps. It's something like, don't cheat yourself out of this beautiful experience, or I forgot what the actual title is. You can find it, but it's basically why you must not skip steps. You need to go through the steps. Once you go through them enough, then you can make greater leaps, and you don't have to go through every single step as much. But you need to know the rules before you can break them. You don't want to skip steps with things. Like I say all the time, you don't want to be that person who, like, I don't know, goes into the gym and puts 500 pounds on the bench press and tries to lift that and seriously hurts or kills themselves because they forgot you need to start with the bar. You need to start with 10 pounds on each side, or 25 pounds, or whatever it is for you. You need to start with something reasonable and not skip the step of understanding how to do it and work step by step. Do progress slowly with that, because if you do it wrong and you try to skip all those steps, it could literally kill you. And that can be applied to business. It can be applied to your health. It can be applied to relationships. You would not want to, I don't know, see a pretty girl or pretty guy or whatever you're into and be like, you haven't even talked to them yet. You just see them in the distance, and you wouldn't want to just run up to K Jewelers or something and buy an engagement ring, and the first thing you say to them is, will you marry me? They're going to look at you like you're crazy. You might get a restraining order on you. Right? You don't want to be the person that skips steps. Do you see what I'm saying? And with this curse of knowledge, what I'm saying is people aren't going to understand even some of the simple things that you're explaining if the steps haven't been gone through. If by you just telling them an answer to something is making them skip steps, then they're not going to understand. It's going to confuse them. This is why it's important to remember the curse of knowledge. That when you become very acquainted to something, that does not mean that everybody else in the world is. And like I said, I'll bring it back up because I hate it when people do this, but you get those really like those people with a lot of ego, whether they're playing Call of Duty or whether they're like teaching somebody how to drive for the first time, and the person is, I don't know, giving it too much gas or braking too hard, and they're like, you don't even know this, or they don't know all the little controls, or whatever it is. Do you see what I'm saying? And they're making all those comments and getting frustrated with how that person doesn't even know how to do X, Y, and Z. Of course they don't. You are letting the curse of knowledge like bite you in the ass here, and you're forgetting that people need to go through the steps. Don't cheat that beautiful experience. You can't. If you just give somebody the answer to something, and it's something that it's something that's important and impactful, you're going to cheat. You're going to cheapen their experience of whatever it is. This is kind of the teach a man to fish versus just catching him a fish sort of thing. You see what I'm saying? This also leads into, I have plenty of videos on here about helplessness. And like one of the ways that we learn helplessness is by being just given all the answers to stuff, and by a lot of people around us falling prey to this curse of knowledge and making us feel like we're stupid for asking questions, for making mistakes, for trying things. You ever have somebody like that in your life? That's one of the reasons why imposter syndrome is so prevalent, because that combined with that spotlight effect, or the spotlight bias, says what? It says, like, okay, everybody's looking at me. We have proof right here. Spotlight bias, I'm the center of the universe, so everyone's looking at me. We know that already. And also, we also know that we don't know as much as we would like to interact with this subject, let's say. And on top of that, there's people out there, too many of them, that have this curse of knowledge that are gonna be like, this dude doesn't know this. Everyone laugh at him. Or that girl thinks that she can do this. She can't even get it started, or whatever, you know. Oh God, you're hopeless. You're hopeless. You ain't no good, or all of those things. Do you see how in society that sort of thing makes people tumble, like mentally? Mentally, you'll tumble, and these biases will get control of you, because we have a very strong aversion to ostracism. I think that's the word, being ostracized, right? To where the group mentality is very important to the human being, because for tens of thousands of years, longer than that, when we lived in tribes and there were no modern conveniences, there weren't cities, there weren't markets and all of those things. We lived in tribes for most of our lives, or for most of the existence of the human being. And if for some reason you did something that made your tribe not like you and you got kicked out, you died. Plain and simple. Basically, you died, because you weren't able to be a hermit. The world was too dangerous then. Not only was there not shelter, not in the traditional sense, not like houses and cities and stuff. You might be able to find a cave, but I'll tell you one thing, you ain't keeping that cave if it's just you. The second a dangerous animal, like a bear or something, or a neighboring enemy tribe comes in and sees that there's only one damn dude defending this cave, that's some prime real estate, right? That's a good spot. We could go in there, kick his ass, and basically get the cave essentially for free. So as soon as somebody finds out about your cave, whether it's an animal or whether it's a neighboring tribe, you lose it. So even if you found a cave, you don't have shelter, you don't have food, you have only so much energy a day. You can't go hunting animals all day long, or gathering crops, or any of that stuff, right? You survived because of your tribe. So getting kicked out of it, that was a no-no. If you wanted to live, you did not get kicked out of your tribe. So these biases became ingrained. That fear of public speaking, because you did not want to be the person that's like, hey man, I know that we like to, I don't know, eat this kind of berry, but what about those over there? Yeah, what do y'all think? You know, it's another kind of berry, and it's not that far from here. We can go and we can just try to collect some, and then we'll have more variety. If you said that and enough people didn't like it, which was very possible, because people did not like new things back then, especially back then, they could be like, this dude is crazy, we need to get him out of the tribe before he makes us do something stupid, or he'll do something stupid and hurt the rest of the team here. You see what I'm saying? And then out you go, and that's basically death by exile, is what that is. And so people didn't want to speak up about things. All right, we wanted things to keep going the same way that they were. That's why a lot of these things exist. All right, because we always have that stage fright that, man, if people don't like me, man, I'm going to die. That's basically what the brain is telling you, because humans, they're not like solitary creatures. They can't live on their own, really. Your brain was developed to live and interact with other people, groups of people. They say that's one reason in primates brains are a lot more complex, because all primates have that kind of social structure, but especially humans, because humans aren't as strong as other primates, for one. You know, if you don't believe me, then go arm wrestle a silverback gorilla or something. I don't know. But do you see what I'm saying? We can't climb trees, really. Not really well. Not like an actual, like a chimpanzee or something. Humans are not built to be swinging from trees all day long. Okay, not like an actual like other types of primates or monkeys and stuff. You see what I'm saying? Compared to them, we're nothing. We just our muscles are not built the same way. We're not arboreal like that. We aren't strong. We don't have claws and we don't have teeth and we can't really run fast at all. There are so many animals that don't look like they can run that can outrun a human easy. Like even like fat animals like cows and buffalo. And see, fat animals are not like fat people. Fat animals can move, like pigs or warthogs and stuff. Those things will move. Humans are not good at that. Humans aren't good at defending themselves. We have to come up with all these creative spears and bows and arrows and knives and stuff to defend ourselves. But the reason the human has existed, apart from the fact that the species that is dominant is the one that is the most adaptable, yes, but we are adaptive as a collective in order to think creatively. Okay, so that's enough of that for a little while. Just remember, the tribal mentality is a lot of the reason why these kinds of things exist. This imposter syndrome, this spotlight effect, this curse of knowledge, how I've been saying how they all feed into each other, and it produces stage fright, plain and simple, and also through the pattern of like I said, commitment consistency before. Like if you are consistently making decisions that have other people pointing fingers and questioning you and picking on you or something, and in some places in the world or in some, especially when you're going through school or you're a young kid, this is a lot more prevalent, so it kind of ingrains it and it happens over and over. You're like, dude, your brain only has so much that it's willing effort that it's willing to put into something. It's like, dude, I've been raised since I've been small to not like being different, to not like going against the grain, to not like trying anything new. The stupid thing is that at what point, I guess it's when school starts, at what point do people start developing these things? Because when you look at a very young child who doesn't know how to walk or talk yet, and you see them trying, you see a baby try to stand up and they fall. And they try again and they fall and they fall and they fall and they fall and they keep doing it. Right? Nobody looks at them and is like, ha ha, that stupid baby. Why do you keep trying that? Look, he doesn't even know how to walk yet, man. Look, you're never gonna get anywhere. You're an idiot. You're no good and all that. Would you say that to a baby? That would be the stupidest thing anyone's ever heard of. Maybe a slightly older kid will say it to them because they're starting to get this curse of knowledge. They forgot that it wasn't that long ago that they were learning how to walk or to speak or to whatever. And through that curse of knowledge, they forgot that, hey, not everybody can do that. You gotta go through the steps, man. So if you wouldn't do that for a baby, remember, you must approach pretty much everything in your life that you are learning new as if you were a child learning it. That's the best way to do it. Everybody always says, who are the best learners out there? A child. Children are the best learners. One reason is because they have not established this an ego in the traditional sense. That spotlight effect is big for them. They think they are the center of the universe, and in their family they may very well be, especially during like most of their young years. But along with the spotlight effect, they don't have the bad of, the imposter syndrome, or the curse of knowledge from other people attacking them. They don't have the bad stuff. All they have is the spotlight, and they're very egotistic. If and they're not trying to be. They're just like, hey, there's a grand world out there, plenty of stuff to learn. We're going to touch and feel and play with everything and look at everything, and that's how children are. And they haven't developed this sort of imposter syndrome yet. And baby doesn't go, man, look at all the grown-ups, man. I better not try to walk because who am I try to walk? These people can really walk and talk. I can't do it. If I try, everyone's going to figure out that I'm an imposter, that I am deceiving everybody, that everything I'm doing is I'm not really that good at it. You see what I'm saying? Now, unfortunately, it follows you even when you are good at it. We have plenty of people that are fantastic, that are exceptional at what they do, and they still say, hey, that imposter syndrome, it does stick with you, because it's almost like a stain. I say this a lot, a stain upon your brain, because for 99% of us, as we were growing up and we started finding out that we're not actually the center of the universe, that there are some other people out there, and a lot of those people are mean, and when we try things, they laugh at us, the other kids, we get picked on, or if we're different, or any of those things. Right? You remember what I'm talking about? Like when you were going through school, if you weren't the recipient of that sort of attention, you probably still saw it, and plenty of it. And everyone has been the recipient at some point or another. So what I'm saying here is, you see, when you go through those sorts of things, it creates a stain upon your brain. It may never let you go. That's why you have people of grand success. Like I said, exceptionally talented and wise people and intelligent who have this problem, because it sticks with you. Because your brain, literally, as it was getting built, as it was building itself, because as we know, brains aren't fully developed until mid to late 20s, sometimes early 30s. It depends on the person a little bit, but they're not done at 18, generally speaking, right? You don't have all of your executive functioning and your prefrontal cortex all the way developed and those sorts of things that have that higher order executive functioning. Like I said, those things are not done yet. In humans, they usually don't finish until your mid-20s. Or later for some people. There's all kinds of different science, but most people would agree it is not at 18, even though you are technically, at least in most of the developed world, considered an adult at 18. And also this, the curse of knowledge, also by lots of other adults, whether they mean to or not, the curse of knowledge that they have, then they look at you at 18, you're like, damn, you're 18, you're an adult, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you, I don't know, going to college, or why aren't you making straight A's, or why aren't all your relationships perfect, and your friendships, and your romance, and why aren't you an investor already? Why aren't you already know about all of this stuff? You see what I mean? People don't often outright say it, but you know what I'm talking about. There is an expectation, it's like an unwritten rule, an unwritten expectation that it's palpable, though most people don't outright say it, but there's an unwritten expectation that, hey, when you're 18, you better know all this stuff or all these things, and damn, what this youngin' here, they don't know anything. The youth today, and in my day we did, all of that stuff. That's that curse of knowledge again. All right, so those sorts of things, while your brain is still developing and making itself, your brain has to take those in, and their experiences, and they're not pleasant, and it takes that into account along with all these little biases I'm always talking about on here, and it literally builds itself with those sorts of situations as its building blocks. And that's why it's so hard to change, even after the evidence is incontrovertible that some of these people are fantastic at something. And even if you're not already fantastic, you can tell though that with your momentum, with your affinity for certain topics, all right, that one day you will be great. And even people like that have that discouragement that's literally built inside of their neurons. This is literally in the physiological level. They can do brain scans on people and see neurons, and they have all their little I forgot what they're called. Their little like a little coral reef almost, or they look like kind of like spider webs. I think they're called dendrites. The pieces of them that split off of the actual neuron, and they're like hairs, and they touch each other, and then they'll twist up and they'll grow together, and that's how electrical signals find different pathways through the brain. The more of those pathways that you have grow together, the more neural connections, they call that you grow together, like the more that you learn and the easier it is to remember things. And the problem is, with things that are painful, those things grow easily and they're very hard to separate. That's why a lot of people have PTSD from things that happened in their childhood. Like, you could, I don't know, when you were a child, you saw like your friend had like a pet tarantula or something, and for some reason you freaked it out and it got out of its cage, and it ran towards you and it crawled up your leg a little, and then you freaked out when you were a little kid or something. Even though it might not have even have hurt you, it probably didn't. Tarantulas don't usually look for a person, run at them, crawl up their leg, and bite them immediately. That's not something that they usually do, but they might just be skittering around because they're scared and accidentally crawl up your leg or something. And as a kid, that could have scarred you. That could have been the scariest thing that has ever happened to you. And no matter what you do now, you're always afraid of spiders or tarantulas. Granted, that would be scary to most people. But do you see how a scarring event, even something that basically cannot happen to you as an adult, or even if it did, would not put you in any sort of actual danger? Can you see how that thing can become part of who you are later on? Because it was a negative experience that got stained onto your brain. These are big things, guys. So like that's why, anyways, imposter syndrome. I also put here the beware of the self-monitoring. Then I'll explain quickly what that means. And basically the self-monitoring is the whole thing. They're always worried about, like, oh, what are they thinking of me? Especially when you're doing the thing you're supposed to be doing, a presentation, or if maybe you're out on a date with somebody, and you're constantly thinking, okay, am I sitting up straight? Am I sitting up too straight? Am I talking enough? Am I asking enough questions? Am I being me? Am I being funny enough? Am I being real enough or sweet enough and stuff? And you're doing all of that. You're self-monitoring too much. That can undermine everything that you do, because then you take yourself out of the moment. Then you're not in a moment. You're analyzing every little thing that happens. And that is not a thing that you want to do if you want to put on a good show, whatever it is that you're doing. So beware the over self-monitoring, doing it too much. Okay, you want to do some self-monitoring, and you want to look back on stuff and be like, okay, how did this go? But you don't want to get stuck there. This, by the way, is interesting that I read not too long ago. The reason why people that throughout the history of mankind, why the beliefs in things like God or higher powers or things like that, or even luck, beliefs in those things are beneficial in many ways, is because it takes that self-monitoring off of your psyche. You're like, oh, okay, well, God wanted me to experience this. Or, hey man, some people get lucky sometimes they don't. You know, the fortune or Mother Nature, whoever, that it doles out your karma or whatever it is you believe, or that you've at least seen other people believe. One of the things that's functional, one of the components that is functional about those sorts of beliefs is they take you off of yourself for some things. You're just like, hey, didn't work this time. Maybe I don't have that much luck. We'll try it the next time. Because the alternative is this. The alternative is thinking, okay, well, if I did have 100, there's nobody else that could be watching over me or anything. If I did have 100% of the responsibility and there's no greater plan, now I'm going to self-monitor too much. Now, everything that happens, I have to run through all of these filters and these checks and these, and do you see what I'm saying? You're thinking about it constantly. So oftentimes, being able to offload some of that helps not self-monitor so much. It helps you live in the moment a little bit more, and you have a lot more mental capacity. There is a function of beliefs like that, which is very interesting. Now, I also am definitely an advocate of people taking as much responsibility of things as they can, even some things that weren't their fault. And I have a video on that, and that isn't so you self-monitor too much. It's a balance. Remember, if you're self-monitoring too much with some things, you probably need to let go of the responsibility and say, hey man, sometimes people just get unlucky. Try again or something. Maybe it was nothing you did or who you are or something. But generally speaking, the more things you can take on responsibility for without getting this analysis paralysis that I'm talking about here, then the more power that you have over your own life, over what's going on. And that's an encouraging feeling to have. I'm going to do another video on, maybe next, on the different kinds of power. Amy Cuddy in this book Presence talks about having this social power, right? And having also this personal power. So we'll probably do one on that, and there's an important distinction there. But anyways, thank y'all so much for being here for this one. Remember, this is about imposter syndrome, spotlight effect, the curse of knowledge. This is an important one to help you better understand how it is that you're feeling in a social setting, and how some of it is a little overblown. You want to pull back on especially your young programming that is causing you to feel these sorts of ways and behave in certain ways. Okay, so anyways, thank y'all so much for being here for this one, and have a beautiful day.